Resources. So all organisms require resources to grow, develop, maintain life processes, and to reproduce. So without resources, none of these things happen. So natural resources are the resources that Earth provides. This includes Earth's organisms, nutrients, rocks, water, and minerals, etc. These may come from the soil, the air, the water, or deep in Earth's crust. And then all the items that you use every day come from natural resources. So, really, natural resources are used in one way or another to create all the other resources that we use. So, if you look at this picture here from the kitchen, basically everything in here is some sort of natural resource or comes from some sort of natural resource. Granted, some of them are highly processed, but they still come from some natural resource. Now, renewable resources. So a renewable resource is a natural resource that can be replaced by nature in a short period of time. So these are resources that can be replaced by nature. So for example, a tree can be cut down, used for paper or firewood or whatever, and then replaced by planting a seedling. This includes fresh air, fresh surface water in lakes, rivers, and streams, and most groundwater. Fertile soil is renewable if it's used properly. However, it can be eroded if it's left bare and exposed to wind and water erosion. It's kind of true with a lot of these things. If we don't use them wisely and properly, they may not be renewable. This does include all living things and elements that cycle in the environment, such as nitrogen, carbon, and phosphorus. So we're talking about elements on the periodic table here. And inexhaustible resources such as solar energy and wind are also considered renewable. Inexhaustible basically means they will never run out. Now, sustainable yield of organisms. So sustainable yield results from the replacement of renewable resources at the same rate at which they are consumed. So if we replace living resources as they are used, then it's sustainable. Using non-living resources at a rate slower than they cycle in the environment also makes them sustainable. So we have to be careful how fast we use these things, or if we're talking about living resources, how much of it we harvest from the environment, etc. So you can't cut down every tree and expect it to be sustainable. Organisms in the biosphere are important renewable resources. So as long as some mature individuals of a species survive, they can reproduce. Or if it's something like trees, as long as we are replanting trees, they could be sustainable. This includes crops, animals raised for food, and forests. So all of these are included. So as an example, forests cut down to produce paper products can be harvested every 10 to 20 years, while trees cut for lumber can be replaced within 60 years. It takes longer for the lumber trees because they have to get bigger so you can cut boards out of them. Whereas what we're cutting down to make paper, you can actually take this and you're making pulp out of it. So you're just basically turning this into sawdust so that you can produce paper. Now, as an example, bamboo. Bamboo is one of Earth's most versatile renewable resources. It's used by more than half of the world's population for food, shelter, fuel, and clothing. It's one of the world's fastest growing plants. It can be harvested every 3 to 5 years. And since it's a grass, it can be harvested without replanting because the part that you're cutting is not the part where it grows from. So it can actually grow back from the ground. This also grows without fertilizers or pesticides. In fact, in some areas of the U.S., bamboo is invasive. Once it gets started, it will take over these huge areas and you have no option but to cut it down. So you may as well cut it down and use it for something. Sunlight. Sunlight is an inexhaustible source of energy for almost all processes on Earth. I say almost all because it's basically everything that is in the sunlight. You got processes in the deep oceans and stuff where there is no sunlight that it's not really a source of energy for those. But for most processes that we see, or all processes that we see on a regular basis, sunlight is the ultimate energy source for that. It's considered renewable because it should be available for the next 5 billion years or so. Energy from sunlight is collected and stored during photosynthesis in plants. Okay, so this is where we think about energy in terms of, say, gasoline or oil or wood or things like that. Well, that energy was all stored from the sun during photosynthesis at some point in the past. And then that energy is stored as chemical energy and we release it. by burning those fuels. So you have a lot of this stored as chemical energy. And then copper, a non-renewable resource. So copper is commonly used in pipes and wires, and the price of copper does fluctuate, but has steadily increased over time. It's expensive because there are a limited number of copper mines, but demand for copper continues to increase because we have more houses, we have a bigger population, we need more copper for more products, more things that we use. When a mine is exhausted, no more copper can be mined without finding new sources. This is the whole idea of a non-renewable resource. Once you get it all out of the ground, there isn't any more. The only way you get more copper is either find new sources or recycle the copper you've already taken out of the ground. Now, non-renewable resources, like copper, are resources that exist in a fixed amount in various places in Earth's crust and can be replaced only by geological, physical, and chemical processes that take millions of years. So non-renewable resources, there's a finite amount. There's only a certain amount available, and they cannot be replaced in any reasonable amount of time. Examples include fossil fuels such as coal and oil and natural gas, diamonds, other gemstones, and elements such as gold, copper, silver, iron, etc. Okay, so these are all non-renewable resources. Now, keep in mind, some of these, like I said, gold, copper, silver, iron, aluminum, elements can be recycled. We can just melt them down and use them again, but you have to melt down whatever is made out of those to start with, so you can't make copper wiring for a house and then use that same copper to make something else. You'd have to take the copper out and melt it down and make new copper wire. So there's only a finite amount of these resources.